Okay, everybody, you should have your name and explain chart, and we are going to fill in the paraphrase column together. I'm going to kind of go over what each thing means, and all you have to do is write it down. Let's go. Okay, so just before we get going, I want to point out that paraphrasing is when you put something in your own words. If you paraphrase something before you analyze it, it helps a lot because as you're paraphrasing and putting it in your own words, you might find words you don't understand and you'll look them up. And so your comprehension of what you're reading will go up. And you can't really analyze something and find the deeper meaning if you don't understand what it means at all. So paraphrasing really helps with comprehension. And it's also important to remember that it's not the same as summarizing. When you summarize, you make it shorter and only keep the main, most important ideas. When you paraphrase, you keep all the ideas, and sometimes the paraphrase is even longer than the original. So let's look at this example. The original text says Willy Wonka was famous for his delicious candy. Children and adults loved to eat it. And here's the paraphrase. Willy Wonka was known throughout the world. So you see famous is kind of orange over here, and known throughout the world means the same thing as famous, but it's just put in this person's own words. Because people, children and adults, people, right? That means the same thing. Enjoyed eating, loved to eat it. The tasty is subbing in for delicious here. So this person has processed this original text through his or her brain and written it out in his or her own words, and now they really understand it because they stopped and thought about it. So that's the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing, and what we're going to be doing is paraphrasing. Okay, we're going to start with the first line in the poem. The original says, nature's first green is gold. And I'm going to paraphrase it to say, the green in early spring is precious. So nature's first green is the green in springtime. And so that's why I put that green. So you'd see how I took this original text and turned it into my own paraphrase. And is gold I took to mean as precious. And so that's why that one's in blue. And then there's a little picture here of the little bud in the first of spring. Okay, the second line, the original says, her hardest hue to hold. And remember, we had looked up hue in the dictionary and it said color or shade. So I made it shade. That shade is hard to keep, right? That early spring green is the hardest color to hold on to or to keep. And I put a little picture down here. Here's the early spring, and it changes into summer pretty quickly. So write down that paraphrase in your paraphrase column of your name and explain chart. Okay, our next line, her early leaf's a flower. So again, we talked earlier about that the her is nature, or in the early part of nature is spring. So I changed it to in spring, trees and bushes bloom with gorgeous blossoms. And there are some beautiful spring blossoms. That's actually an apple tree. That's what they look like in the springtime. Okay, next line, but only so an hour. So it lasts a short time. Now, he doesn't literally mean that they're only a blossom for an hour, but just saying like, hey, it's a really short time. And look, there's an apple tree in the summer. So where it was all beautiful and flowery in the springtime, now in the summertime, I mean, it's still pretty, but it's just leaves. It's not anything like super special. Then leaf subsides to leaf. So remember, subsides was one of our vocabulary words that we looked up in the dictionary, and it meant sinking. So I just used the word from the dictionary for that. So then the leaf sinks down to become another leaf. And so there's our summer apple tree, and there it is sinking down to be another leaf in the fall. So Eden sank to grief, and grief was one of our vocab words that meant sadness. So just like how Eden was overcome with sadness. And if you knew the story of Adam and Eve, they were all happy and having a great time, and then they got kicked out of Eden and they were super sad. So I illustrated it for you. Well, I didn't make the illustration. I found it on the internet. So dawn goes down today. So dawn, we looked that up. It's the early part of the morning. So just as a morning lowers into daytime. So it's all beautiful and awesome in the morning, and then it's like, regular sky. And the last line is the same thing as the title, nothing gold can stay. So I paraphrased in that nothing precious, because we said gold could mean like precious, symbolize something precious. Nothing precious lasts forever. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so your paraphrase column should look something like mine. Hopefully your handwriting is better than mine is, but all together it says, the green in early spring is precious. That shade is hard to keep. In spring, trees and bushes bloom with gorgeous blossoms. It lasts a short time. Then the leaf sinks down to become another leaf. Just as Eden was overcome with sadness, just as morning lowers into daytime, nothing precious lasts forever. Okay, if you don't have your paraphrase in your paraphrase column, make sure you stop and get it down before we move on to the next step.